The universe has a way of humbling those who venture too far into its depths. Dr. Amara Okafor learned this lesson in the most terrifying way possible. 847 light-years from Earth, when the pioneer's hope began to die. The first sign was subtle a flicker in the overhead lighting, a momentary stutter in the gravity plating beneath her feet. Amara looked up from her research terminal, frowning. The ship's AI should have compensated for any power fluctuation automatically. Bridge. This is Research Lab 3. She spoke into her communicator. Are we experiencing technical difficulties? The response came not from Captain Reeves, but from the ship's chief engineer, Marcus Torres. His voice was tight with barely controlled panic. Dr. Okafor, seal your section immediately. We have a cascading failure in the AI core. Radiation containment is. The communication cut off as the lights died completely. Emergency strips along the floor flickered to life, bathing everything in sickly red. Then the screaming started. Amara ran toward the sound, her scientific training warring with her survival instinct. She found Engineer Chen collapsed in the corridor, blood streaming from her nose and ears. The woman's eyes were unfocused, pupils dilated to impossible sizes. Radiation exposure. Amara whispered, her medical training kicking in. But she had no equipment here, no way to help. She dragged Chen toward the medical bay, her heart hammering against her ribs. The ship lurched violently, throwing them both against the bulkhead. Amara felt something crack in her shoulder, white-hot pain shooting down her arm. The artificial gravity was failing now, objects beginning to float around them in the eerie red light. She reached the medical bay to find it in chaos. Dr. Yuki Tanaka was trying to treat 3 crew members at once, all showing signs of acute radiation sickness. Captain Reeves lay on one of the beds, his face gray, breathing shallow. How bad? Amara asked, though she already knew the answer. Yuki didn't look up from her work. The AI core suffered a quantum decoherence event. The radiation shielding failed before Torres could shut it down. We're all contaminated. Her voice was clinical. Detached, the only way to function in the face of certain death. At current exposure levels, we have maybe 8 hours. Probably less, 8 hours. Amara felt the reality of it settle over her like a shroud. They were weeks from the nearest human outpost, traveling through a region of space so remote that few ships ever ventured here. The pioneers' hope had been charting new routes, searching for faster paths between the colonies. Now their ambition would be there too. The distress beacon, she asked, active. Captain Reeves managed to rasp from his bed. But we're in the middle of nowhere, Amara. Nobody's coming. Nobody even knows we're out here. Amara moved through the ship in a daze, helping where she could. The crew of 8 young, brilliant explorers all were dying by degrees, some faster than others. Engineer Torres had taken the worst of it, unconscious now, his body shutting down. Pilot Sarah Kim was still functional, but vomiting blood. Communications Officer David Park sat at his station, faithfully monitoring the distress signal that broadcast into empty space. Anything? Amara asked him, knowing the answer. David shook his head. Nothing. Not even background static. This sector is dead, Dr. Okafor. We're alone. Hours crept past like centuries. The ship grew colder as life support systems failed one by one. The air took on a metallic taste that Amara knew was blood in her own mouth. She thought about her daughter, Kira, only 12 years old. She thought about her husband, Thomas, waiting back on Earth. She had promised to come home for Kira's 13th birthday. That promise would be broken. Amara found herself on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. They were beautiful, indifferent to the tiny human drama playing out in this forgotten corner of space. She had devoted her life to understanding the cosmos, and now the cosmos would claim her. Dr. Okafor. David's voice crackled over the intercom, suddenly urgent. I'm picking up something. A ship. It's not human. Amara's heart surged. First contact protocols flooded her mind. Humanity had encountered two other spacefaring species. Both encounters peaceful but cautious. But what were the odds of meeting someone here, in this desolate region? Can you identify them? She asked, running toward the bridge. Negative. The design is completely unknown. Energy signature unlike anything in our database. They're approaching us. Fear and hope warred in Amra's chest. Alien contact was always dangerous. Humanity's peaceful encounters had been the exception, not the rule, in galactic history. But what choice did they have? The ship that appeared on their view screen was breathtaking. It looked organic, like a massive nautilus shell rendered in silver metal, with flowing curves and spiraling patterns that seemed to shift in the light. Bioluminescent strips pulsed along its hull in colors Amara had never seen before. A communication came through. The language was utterly alien, complex harmonics and resonant tones that their translation software struggled to process. Then, haltingly, words formed. Human vessel. We detect damage. Radiation. You are dying. Amara grabbed the communicator with shaking hands. Yes, we're dying. Our ship's AI core failed. 8 crew. Radiation poisoning. Please, if you can help us. Silence. It stretched for an eternity. Then, we are Kefren. Our law is clear. We do not interfere with lesser developed species. It is forbidden. It is sacred law. Amara felt her hope shatter. They would die here, after all, watched by aliens who could save them, but wouldn't. She wanted to scream, to rage at the injustice. But what good would it do? I understand, she said quietly. Thank you for stopping. I hope you have safe travels. Another pause. Then a different voice came through the translator, older, carrying weight. I am Captain Vrel of the Kefren vessel Meridian's Grace. What are your names, humans? Confused, Amara listed them. Dr. Amara Okafor, Captain James Reeves, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Engineer Marcus Torres, Pilot Sarah Kim, Communications Officer David Park, Engineers Chen Wei and Thomas Morrison. 8 names, Vrel said. 8 lives, 8 futures that will end here unless we act. There was something in his tone conflict, pain. My crew is debating. Our law is ancient. We do not interfere. But 8 lives, 8 names. On the view screen, Amara could see activity on the Kefren ship. Though the visual feed was unclear, she sensed movement, discussion, perhaps argument. Captain Reeves pulled himself up from where he'd been lying. Dr. Okafor, You should know if they help us, they'll likely face severe consequences. Kefren law is absolute. I've read the few reports we have. They're a rigid society, very hierarchical. Breaking sacred law means exile, possibly death. Then why would they even consider it? Amara whispered. Reeves smiled weakly. Maybe because 8 lives matter more than laws. Even to aliens, the weight was agonizing. Amara watched her crew deteriorating. Torres had stopped breathing twice, revived by Yuki's desperate efforts. Chen was delirious, calling for her mother. The ship's systems were failing faster now, main power at 15%. Life support nearly gone. Then Vrel's voice returned. Dr. Okafor, my crew has voted. We cannot leave you to die. We will help you. Prepare for docking. Amara wept. She had never been particularly religious, but she offered thanks to whatever force in the universe had brought the Kefrens here, had moved them to mercy. The docking process was complex. Human and Kefren ships weren't designed to interface, but the Kefrens adapted, extending a flexible boarding tube that sealed against the Pioneer's Hope's airlock. When the door opened, Amara got her first look at their saviors. The Kefrens were tall, nearly 7 feet, with forearms and bodies covered in intricate crystalline scales that shimmered with internal light. Their faces were elongated, with 3 eyes arranged in a triangle, and no visible mouth communication seemed to happen. Through resonance in their chest cavities, they moved with fluid grace, like dancers. Captain Vrel was distinguishable by the deep blue coloration of his scales and additional bioluminescent patterns. He approached Amara, and though his face was alien, she sensed compassion in his 3-eyed gaze. We will move your crew to our medical facility, his translated voice said. Our technology can help, but you must trust us completely. We trust you, Amara said. Thank you. Thank you so much. The Kefrens worked with incredible efficiency. They carried the dying humans gently to their ship, into a medical bay that looked more like an aquarium filled with glowing light and floating crystalline structures. Each human was placed in a cylindrical chamber filled with luminescent fluid. This will heal, Vrel explained. The radiation damage, the cellular destruction. Our medicine works at the quantum level. It will repair you completely, but you must remain submerged for several cycles. As Amara was lowered into her own chamber, the last thing she saw was Vrel's face. Those 3 eyes watching with what she could only interpret as hope. Then the fluid closed over her, warm and strange, and consciousness faded. She dreamed of home. When Amara woke, she felt reborn. The pain was gone. The sickness was gone. She was lying on a platform in the Kefren medical bay, breathing easily, her body whole. Around her, the other 7 crew members were waking up too, equally amazed. Dr. Tanaka was crying. Torres was laughing. Captain Reeves just sat in stunned silence. Vrel entered the room, accompanied by several other Kefrens. You are healed, he said simply. All 8. The radiation is purged. You will live full lives. How can we ever thank you? Amara asked, standing on steady legs. You saved us. You saved all of us. You broke your laws for us. Vrel's scales shifted color, something that might have been a smile. No thanks are needed. We did what was right. That is enough. But Amara shook her head. She pulled out her personal recording device. Every researcher carried one. She activated it, making sure the file was set to permanent storage, maximum encryption, multiple backups. I am Dr. Amara Okafor of the Terran Exploration Corps. She said clearly into the recorder. Today, Captain Vrel and the crew of the Kefren vessel Meridian's Grace saved 8 human lives. They violated their most sacred laws to show us mercy when we were strangers, when they had nothing to gain and everything to lose. She looked directly at Vrel. Humanity has a saying, we remember. It's not just words. It's who we are. We remember kindness. We remember debts. We remember our friends. Amara copied the recording to a Kefren-compatible data crystal and pressed it into Vrel's upper right hand. Keep this. I don't know if we'll ever meet again. I don't know what the future holds. But I swear to you, on my life and my daughter's life, if your people ever need help, any help at all, you send this to us. You understand? Humanity will come. Vrel held the crystal, clearly not understanding the weight of what she was saying. How could he? The Kefrens didn't carry debts across decades. They didn't build their culture on loyalty that transcended generations. I accept your gratitude, he said formally. It's not gratitude, Amara said intensely. It's a promise, a blood oath. Humanity will remember this. We will remember you. The Kefrens repaired the pioneers' hope, giving them enough power and supplies to reach the nearest human outpost. They stayed with the humans for 6 days, making sure everything functioned properly. In that time, Amara learned what Vrel's choice would cost him. I will be exiled, he told her on the last day, stripped of my rank, forbidden from returning to Kefren Prime. My crew will face lesser punishments, demotions, reductions in status. We knew this when we chose to help you. Vrel, I'm so sorry, Amara said. If we had known, would you have chosen differently? He asked. Would you have asked us not to save you? She couldn't answer that. We made our choice knowing the cost, Vrel continued. We decided that 8 lives mattered more than our comfort, our status, our place in society. I do not regret it. I will never regret it. Amara embraced him, her small human frame against his tall, crystalline body. Then neither will we. I promise you, Vrel. I promise. When the pioneers' hope finally limped into human space, Amara filed her report. She made sure Vrel's story was entered into every database, marked with the highest importance flags. She told her daughter about the kind aliens who saved Mommy's life. She told her husband. She told everyone who would listen. On her deathbed, 35 years later, Amara's last words to her grandson James were, if the Kefrens ever call, you go, no matter what. You remember what they did. You remember, and far across the galaxy, in a small dwelling on a forgotten Kefren colony world, an exiled captain named Vrel kept a data crystal. Sometimes, late at night, he would play the recording of a human woman making a promise. He never truly believed she meant it. He was wrong. 35 years is nothing to the universe. Stars barely notice such spans. Civilizations rise and fall in longer cycles. But for individuals, 35 years is a lifetime. Children become adults. Heroes become memories, and promises fade into history. Captain Nira Voss stood on the bridge of her patrol ship, the crystalline dawn, watching her homeworld burn. Kefren Prime had stood for 10,000 years, its crystalline spires reaching toward the heavens, its quantum gardens producing art and philosophy that had shaped galactic culture. Now those spires were collapsing, shattered by weapons that tore reality itself apart. The Zareth Collective had come without warning 6 weeks ago. Their armada had emerged from dark space like a plague, hundreds of vessels, each one a nightmare of biological engineering and destructive capability. They hadn't bothered with declarations of war or demands for surrender. They simply began killing. Captain, another colony just went dark. Her sensor officer, Kelthis, reported. His scales had lost their usual vibrant green, faded to the pale color of shock. New Harmony, 7 million inhabitants. They're gone. Nira felt the number like a physical blow. 7 million. That brought the total casualties to over 40 million Kefrans in 6 weeks. Half their population. The Zareth were systematically exterminating them, and nobody knew why. Any response from the Council? She asked, though she already knew the answer. They've declared full evacuation. Kelthis said quietly, all civilian ships are to flee the system. Military vessels are to provide escort, and that's it. We're abandoning the homeworld. Abandoning. The word felt obscene. Kefrans had lived on this world for millennia. Their history was carved into every crystal formation, encoded in every quantum garden. They were leaving behind everything: their culture, their heritage, their identity. The Council sent requests for aid to every species in the sector. Nira's communications officer, Liz, added. Everyone refused. The Dravik said it wasn't their concern. The Helians cited non-interference treaties. The Ossarians said. They said we weren't worth the risk of angering the Zareth. Nira's for hands clenched into fists. Worth the risk, as if Kefren lives had a calculable value that came up short. Set course for the evacuation fleet. She ordered, we'll escort the civilian transports to. Captain. Liz interrupted, something urgent in her voice. I'm detecting another Zareth attack wave. They're targeting the evacuation ships directly on the view screen. Nira watched in horror as Zareth warships tore through the fleeing civilian vessels. The Kefren ships weren't built for war. They were science vessels, transport barges, family cruisers. They had no weapons, no shields strong enough to withstand the assault. They died like insects beneath a boot. A transport ship called Morning's Promise exploded in a flash of blue light. Nira had eaten breakfast on that ship 2 months ago, meeting with its captain to discuss patrol routes. 1,500 Kefrans had been aboard. Now they were debris. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Nira commanded, pushing her own vessel toward the battle. The crystalline dawn had weapons, minimal ones, designed for clearing space debris and deterring pirates. Against the Zareth, they were laughably inadequate, but she had to try. The battle was brief and brutal. Nira managed to destroy one Zareth fighter by overloading her quantum drive and venting the discharge directly into its path. The explosion took out the enemy ship, but also crippled her own vessel's propulsion. The crystalline dawn listed to one side, warning klaxons blaring, as more Zarath ships closed in. "Captain, we need to evacuate," Kelthis said urgently. "The core is destabilizing." "No," Nira said. "Get the civilians out first. Get them to the fleet. We hold here, Captain." "That's an order." They held. The Crystalline Dawn and 3 other Kethran patrol ships formed a defensive line, buying time for the civilian transports to escape. It cost them everything. One by one, the patrol ships fell. When the Zarath finally broke through their line, Nera watched the sensor display count down her crew's life signs. 43 crew, 37, 21, 8.8. The number triggered something in her memory, but she couldn't place it. The ship was dying around her, and all she could think was 8. A rescue ship pulled the survivors from the wreckage Nira and 7 others. 8 Kethrans, barely alive, radiation poisoned and broken. They were taken to a medical frigate in the evacuation fleet, where doctors worked frantically to save them. Nira drifted in and out of consciousness. In her delirium, she heard fragments of conversation. Lost the homeworld. Council estimates less than half the population. Escaped. Nowhere to go. No one will help. US. She woke fully 3 days later to find herself in a medical pod. Quantum healing fields repairing her damaged body. A doctor and elderly Kethran named Thiessen stood over her. "You live, Captain," Thiessen said. "Though you lost your ship and most of your crew, the evacuation," Nira asked, "ongoing. We've managed to save perhaps 55 million Kethrans. The rest," Thiessen's scales dimmed. "The Zarath have claimed Kethran Prime. Our homeworld is theirs now. We're refugees." Nira wanted to scream, to rage, to tear the universe apart. Instead, she just asked, "Where will we go?" "I don't know. The Council is negotiating with nearby systems for asylum. So far, everyone is afraid. The Zarath are too powerful, too unpredictable. Nobody wants to shelter us and risk becoming their next target." That night, Nira couldn't sleep. She wandered the medical frigate's corridors, passing injured Kethrans, grieving families, lost children. The enormity of the catastrophe was too vast to comprehend. Her entire civilization was dying, and the galaxy was content to watch. She found herself in the ship's data archive, searching for something she didn't know what. Comfort, maybe. Hope. Evidence that the universe contains something other than cruelty and indifference. Her search led her to an old file, marked with her family name, Voss. Curious. She opened it. It was a personal journal belonging to her great-uncle, Vrel Voss. Nira had heard stories about him, the exiled captain who had broken sacred law to help some unknown aliens. He died 10 years ago, alone on a colony world, still in disgrace. She read through his entries, most of them mundane observations about life in exile. Then she found an entry from 35 years ago, dated just after his exile began. "I do not regret my choice," Vrel had written. "We saved 8 lives today. 8 individuals who would have died alone in the dark. The law says we should not have interfered. The Council says I brought shame to our people. But when I close my 3 eyes and see their faces, those 8 humans, Grateful and alive, I know I made the right choice. The human leader, Dr. Okafor, gave me a recording. She made a promise that humanity would remember. I don't believe it, truly. How could they? It was one small act in an infinite universe. But I keep the recording anyway, because it reminds me that somewhere, someone thought my choice mattered. Attached to the entry was a data file. Nira opened it. A voice filled the archive. Rumelian, strange, speaking through translation software. But the emotion behind it was unmistakable. I am Dr. Amara Okafor of the Terran Exploration Corps. Today, Captain Vrel and the crew of the Kefren vessel Meridian's Grace saved 8 human lives. Nira listened to the entire recording, her 3 eyes wide. This human woman was promising that her species would remember, that they would come if the Kefrens ever needed help. 30-5 years ago. Nira searched the database for information about humans. Terrans, they called themselves. They were a relatively young spacefaring species, aggressive and territorial, known for keeping to themselves. Their space was far from Kefren territory, weeks of travel at quantum speed. It was foolish to think they would help. Foolish to think they even remembered. Foolish to risk everything on a promise made by one woman to one exiled captain decades ago. But what other choice was there? Nira checked Vrel's personal effects, transferred to the archive after his death. Among them was a small data crystal, the original recording that Dr. Okafor had given him. It contained not just the promise, but coordinates. A destination, an address for where to send the message if help was ever needed. Nira held the crystal in her upper right hand, feeling the weight of impossible hope. She was just a patrol captain, no authority, no rank worth mentioning in the chaos of evacuation. If she sent this message without council approval, she could face punishment, exile, like Vrel. But her people were dying. Her civilization was ending. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, there might be someone who remembered an old promise. Nira made her way to the communications center. The officer on duty was overwhelmed, managing evacuation, coordinates, and distress signals. He barely noticed when Nira accessed a long-range quantum transmitter. She loaded the crystal's data. The coordinates were still valid. She checked them against current star charts. Human space. The Terran home system. Earth. Nira composed her message carefully. She included the original recording from Dr. Okafor. She attached star charts showing the current Kefren refugee position. She added footage of the Zareth attacks, colonies burning, ships dying, children crying for parents who would never answer. And she wrote, "To the humans of Terra, 35 years ago, Captain Vrel Voss saved 8 of your people when he had no obligation to do so. Dr. Amara Okafor promised that humanity would remember. Our civilization is dying. The Zareth Collective is exterminating us. We have nowhere to run, no one to help us. We once helped you. Do you remember? Do you still honor the promises your people make? We are begging you, please, remember us." She routed the message through the quantum relay network, aimed at human space, and transmitted it at maximum power. The energy cost would be noticed, but she erased the logs as best she could, hoping the chaos of evacuation would hide what she'd done. Then she waited. Days passed. The evacuation continued. The Kefren fleet a ragged collection of thousands of civilian ships, and a handful of military escorts fled deeper into unknown space. Trying to stay ahead of the Zarath pursuit, Nira said nothing about the message. What was there to say? She'd thrown a bottle into an infinite ocean and hoped someone would find it. The odds were astronomical. On the 5th day, the council announced they'd found a system willing to grant temporary asylum. A barely habitable cluster of worlds on the galactic rim. It wasn't home, but it was survival. The fleet altered course. On the 9th day, Zarath scouts found them again. Two patrol ships were destroyed before the aliens broke off, clearly marking the refugee fleet's position for a larger attack force. On the 14th day, Nira was in her quarters. She'd been reassigned to a military escort vessel after losing her ship. When the alarms started screaming, she ran to the bridge. The captain, an experienced officer named Kellers, was staring at the sensor display with an expression of absolute shock. "What is it?" Nira demanded. "Zarath." "No," Kellers whispered. "Not Zarath. I don't understand." Nira looked at the display. Her 3 eyes widened. Quantum signatures. Hundreds of them. Ships dropping out of hyperspace in a coordinated formation that surrounded the entire Kefren refugee fleet. The energy patterns were unknown. Not Zarath, not any species in Kefren records. "Identify those vessels," Kellers ordered. The sensor officer worked frantically. "Captain, the database has no match for these energy signatures." "Wait, cross-referencing with historical data. I found something. These match the pattern described in First Contact Report 7743, dated 35 years ago." "Captain, these are human ships." The bridge went silent. "How many?" Kellers asked, his voice barely audible. "Still counting. Over 400 vessels. Military battleships, cargo carriers, civilian transports, research vessels. It's an entire fleet." "Captain, they're not organized like a military formation. It's more like they all came independently and formed up when they arrived." Nira felt her chest tighten. "They came. The humans actually came. We're receiving a transmission," the communications officer reported. "It's on all frequencies. They're broadcasting in Kefren language." "Play it," Kellers ordered. The voice that filled the bridge was translated, but carried unmistakable emotion. "Kefren vessels. This is the Terran fleet. We received your message. We remember Captain Vrel. We remember the promise Dr. Amara Okafor made 35 years ago. The Zarath Collective has declared war on our friends. This will not stand. You are under Terran protection now. Anyone who harms you will answer to us. We remember." Humanity always remembers. Around the bridge, Kefren officers stood in stunned silence. Some were crying the bioluminescent tears that their species produced in moments of extreme emotion. Nira ran to the observation deck. Through the viewport, she could see them ship after ship, bearing the markings of Earth. They had come across unimaginable distance, risking war with an unknown enemy. All because of a promise made decades ago to an exiled captain who saved 8 strangers. "Get me Elder Thesin," Nira said into her communicator. "Tell him they came. Tell him the humans remembered. In the medical frigate." The elderly doctor who had treated Nira received the message. He made his way to the observation deck and watched the human fleet. With all three eyes streaming tears, he'd been friends with Vrel Voss in exile. He'd been there when Vrel died, still clutching that data crystal, still wondering if humans truly remembered. They remembered, old friend. Thiessen whispered to the stars, "You were right." They remembered, and across hundreds of human ships, thousands of crew members prepared for war, not for territory, not for resources, but for loyalty, for honor, for a debt 35 years old. The Zareth were about to learn what it meant to threaten the friends of humanity.